Good morning. My name is Marisa Kelleher, and I am with Homeschoolers of Maine as part of their communications and social media team. Today, I am sitting down with Brianna Cardiff Hicks, who is part of the American History Education Project. Brianna is a homeschooling mother of three and one of the co-founders of the American History Education Project. She was homeschooled through high school and growing up was active in our homeschool support group. Brianna has a PhD in economics from Stanford University and worked for several years as an economic consultant. She volunteers with her children's ministry at her church and serves as field trip coordinator for her Classical Conversations homeschool community. She loves reading to her children and taking them on adventures. Well, welcome, Brianna. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, we're just going to get right into it.
Sounds good.
So tell us about your background and organization, and also why is homeschooling important to you, and why is it important to protect that freedom?
Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. As you mentioned, I am both a homeschooling mom and also a homeschooling graduate. So I have had the benefit of getting to see homeschooling from both sides, which has been wonderful. I was homeschooled starting in kindergarten and all the way up through high school before going to more traditional public university for undergrad and then private university for graduate school. Um, and now homeschooling my own kids, I have found that homeschooling for myself personally gave me just first a wonderful academic foundation, but also just made us a really close family. And so I really wanted that for my own children. I think it's also just really important that parents have a say in the values that their children are learning, and also just how more controversial topics are being introduced to their children. I feel like public education today has gotten very, very political, unfortunately. And it's really important for parents to have different options available to them. I think homeschooling obviously allows a lot of tailoring and customizing to your own child's interests and needs, and also to your own, like I said, family values. So homeschooling has just been a huge blessing to me in my own life, and I think it's so important that parents are able to choose the education that their children get. And like I said, it also makes for wonderfully close families. The American History Education Project, we're a nonprofit, and we've developed a American history curriculum geared for young children based on great picture books, with the goal of instilling traditional American values and really bringing history to life for our kids.
Yeah, good. I really agree with homeschooling bringing you together as a family. I have loved being able to learn alongside my kids. There is
Yes,
a lot
definitely.
that I was a public school kid, so there's a lot that I missed growing up. So I not only get to see the joy in their faces when they catch on to, a word problem in algebra, or, can break apart a paragraph, I'm learning along with them. So we have that freedom of not only bettering their education, but bettering our own as parents, which I think is really important to carry that out. So I agree with you on that. What values exactly does the American History Education Project promote?
Right. So when we think about traditional American values, we're thinking about things like "In God We Trust," "E pluribus unum," or "Out of many one," "All men are created equal," liberty, rule of law, voluntary associations, strong work ethic, those sorts of things.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I have my kids going to a tech school, my older two, going to a tech school part-time,
Uh-huh.
learning the hard work ethic, learning those trades, that those are important too. And I like that you guys are promoting that. That's something that's important, that there are other values, out there. Not everybody is able to go to a 4-year, college, and we still need that, teaching them that hard work does pay off
Yeah.
and it's important in America. And I love that you guys are, promoting that within your curriculum. Why is it important to promote and pass on the virtues of American exceptionalism?
So we believe that these values and virtues are really what helped make America and American families thrive and really be successful. And we think that they're uh, critical for the continuance of the success of American families. I think it's really important to pass these on so people understand sort of what they are and why they're important, and what benefit we get from them. I think sadly today we haven't done as good a job passing these on as perhaps in previous generations. I know a recent Wall Street Journal poll was showing that people today don't think that things like religion, patriotism, hard work are priorities anymore. Our institutions haven't done a great job passing this on, and in some instances, they're actually actively sort of working against some of these values. You hear about things like some of the critical race theory and the 1619 Project that are really trying to reframe kind of how we view our country, how we view its founding. So there's going to be competing narratives that our children are going to come across in today's world. And so we wanted to make sure that that they know what these values are and why they are worth fighting for. In some cases, competing narratives are going to be coming at children as early as like preschool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, that homeschooling gives us the options. That's what's important, is having that option.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what that option is, we should have that option to teach our kids what we think, those values that we should pass on to them. I think that's very important, no matter which way you're leaning, or what you want to learn personally. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to give our kids that option, have them decide for themselves, and as they grow in critical thinking skills, and being able to kind of make their way through the mush of everything. And I think that's important. What was the reasoning for starting the American History Education Project?
So my parents were trying to find ways to help my husband and I basically teach and pass on these values to our own children. We did a little bit of research and we found that there weren't a lot of resources for the really young age groups. As you
Mm,
got older, there was more available. So not finding a lot, we sort of pulled our community together of different homeschoolers and friends and kind of asked them for some advice. And then from there, just kind of jumped into it and started pulling things together for our own family. And we realized that this could actually be beneficial to others as well. And so at that point, we tried to formalize it a little bit more, and take what we had learned and clean it up and get it ready so that hopefully other people could use it. And that was kind of the start.
yeah. How does stories, you talked about great picture books and literature, how does that help us understand our roots and kind of where we came from?
Yeah, so I think stories are just they're an amazing way to learn about values, to make them become more real, to kind of integrate them into our own life and experience. I think they make things a lot more memorable. So we based our curriculum on great picture books.
Mhm.
And so we'll read these stories with our kids, repeatedly, do a whole bunch of hands-on interactive fun activities. They'll
Yeah.
also kind of help try and let them put themselves into the story. I think a lot of times books let us sort of see how different decisions that one can make can impact outcomes without us actually having to have made those decisions ourselves. So we kind of get an insight into some of these values and characteristics. I mean, American history is replete with some just amazing stories of courage, of self-sacrifice. And introducing in picture books, kind of a friendly introduction, but it's something that really the whole family can engage in.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of touched on that. So how do you make the books understandable? You talked about gearing more towards, the younger kids. And so how
Mhm.
do you make that relatable to them? And how do you evaluate the books for the values that you promote?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've probably read hundreds hundreds of books now, kind of looking for the right ones. And so we have sort of four main criteria for the books
Okay.
that we then base a module around. The first is it's got to have a great story.
Hmm.
That's perhaps obvious, but
Yes.
it's got to have a great story. It's got to have great pictures. It is a picture book after all, and in picture books, it's both the words and the pictures that are really telling the story. So we want to pick books that both children and parents will want to read over and over again. So great story, great pictures. It's got to have the correct values.
Mm,
So we are looking for that in terms of what are they emphasizing, what are they depicting, how are they approaching these topics, and then fourth is it's got to be age appropriate.
yes.
So there are some heavy topics
Yeah.
in history. Children do need to know about these things, but we
Hmm.
need to introduce them in sort of a gentle, age appropriate way when we're
Hmm.
talking about things like slavery and Civil War and
Right.
or those sorts of things. So we're also looking for, can I comfortably read this to, a
Yes.
3-year-old, a 5-year-old?
Yes.
Um, so those are some of the sort of criteria we use for picking books. And then the idea is you would then read the books aloud with your kids, probably over the course of several days, and then do a couple of related activities each of those days. Again, to make it more understandable, to make it more relatable. So one of those things is, a lot of times in these books, they're going to be introducing children into vocabulary that they haven't come across.
Mm.
And so one of the things we usually do is we sort of point out a few vocabulary words. I usually do this a few days into reading the books with my kids. So they've already heard them a few times
Hmm.
in context. And then we explain what they mean and read the story again. And my kids are then listening for those words. And whenever I actually read one, they're like, oh, that was one of them. Um, you know, we teach them some patriotic songs.
Mm.
Um, we go over we call it the political geography. So if we're talking about the 13 colonies, we'll pull out a United States map and
Mm.
what are the states that corresponded to those 13 colonies, or we're learning about the transcontinental railroad. What are the states that actually, that it crossed and impacted? Where did it start? Where did it end? Those sorts of things. We'll try and do arts and crafts with them, science when we can, connected to the story, cooking, just really trying to bring in, especially for the younger kids, just sort of all the senses, right? How can we make this experience more real? And I think the thing we found that is the most helpful for really helping the kids put themselves into the story is a reenactment. So we almost always have some sort of reenactment that we'll probably do a few days in when the story is just really, really familiar for the kids. And so they kind of get to live it out. And it's a lot of fun for everybody, for
Yeah.
parents and kids. So those are some of the things that we try and incorporate to really help these kids understand and make the stories more personal. And I certainly find that I think with my own kids, sometimes they remember the activities
Yeah.
more than the actual historical events.
I agree with that with my kids.
But that's good too,
Yes.
because then it's something to sort of connect with. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, remember when we did this activity that was
Yeah.
related to this
Yeah.
historic event? So it's still good. They're like, oh, right, that
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, the other day, we have a friend of ours who was always, quoting Patrick Henry, "Give me liberty or give me death." And
Yes.
the other day, we were reading a book about the Revolution, and they had the Patrick Henry quote, and my son goes, "Oh, I wonder if this is like related to our friend who always says that." I was like, "I'm pretty sure this is where she got it from." So it's just interesting and fun to see them make the
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important to have activities for them to kind of understand it more. I know with my own kids, especially with them being in high school now, if they just read a concept, they're more likely to kind of brain dump it if it's not a hands on something that kind of locks in that core memory. I think it's
Yeah.
important for us to use our hands, use, as you said, all senses in order to integrate what we're learning, because then you're able to pull it up again. When you smell that smell or you do an activity that's
Yeah.
similar to that, you're able to kind of recall that
Mhm.
better than, if you're just going through and reading, on your
Yeah.
own.
No, definitely. And I think also history, unfortunately, has had sort of a bad rap, if you will, of being a
Yeah.
very dry subject. But it
Yes.
doesn't have to be. I mean, like I said, it's full of these amazing stories. Let's appreciate them and make them
Yeah.
come to life. Because I mean, these are amazing individuals who did things that impact us today.
Right. Yeah. I love that. What can families do to promote the importance of freedom and American exceptionalism to their children? And how do you do that in your own homeschooling journey?
So I, I guess I'll start off by saying, well, they can do the American History Education Project with their kids.
Shameless plug. That's
I
okay.
know, right? Say you set me up there. So
Yeah.
that's that's one thing certainly,
Yeah.
but I think it's pointing out and talking about these values. Values also things like entrepreneurship and so forth as they come up in everyday life. I think modeling these values to our children is another great thing that you can do. I mean, for my family, perhaps obviously, yes, we do the American History Education Project, but then you move on to the next thing, but you try and continue to make those connections and you can sort of recall them, or as different, either something comes up in the news or in everyday life, trying to make those connections. I think especially with young children, uh, you need to make them explicitly for them.
Yes.
And so just sort of being aware and finding those sort of organic opportunities to bring up these conversations
Yeah.
that arise. And again, I think for us, this has been a good sort of foundation. So the kids have something that they can kind of pin these other ideas onto as we come across them in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, do you want to show us some of your modules from your site? And if you could tell
Sure.
us which ones are your kids' favorites and kind of why they're their favorites.
Yeah, that's I'll start with the favorites. And actually, this is a good time because we just did a family presentation and all the kids got to say sort of one of their favorite American
Oh,
history
yeah.
moments. So, uh, my son loves we did Washington Crossing the Delaware.
Yeah.
It's this beautiful book.
Hmm.
But my parents did a surprise attack on my kids, just like the Americans did a surprise attack on the Hessians. And the first time this happened, I mean, my son was like a deer caught in the headlights. He was just like he just stood. He didn't know what to make of it.
Oh, goodness.
Um, which of course I then point out, well, maybe that's how the Hessians felt when
Yeah.
they woke up and there were American soldiers there.
Yeah.
But after the sort of shock of it, at the end he was like, so when are they going to do another surprise attack? And so this is something that has come out. He's always asking for, when's the next
Oh.
surprise attack? It's like, well, if
Well, then
we
it's not a
told
surprise.
you, it wouldn't be much of a surprise,
Yeah.
would it? So that's an activity that, whether we like it or not, has we do all the time.
Yes.
So we always do a good surprise attack.
Yeah.
My younger daughter, this is about Clara Barton and the Civil War.
Yeah.
On the cover, she's holding a lantern, and in this book, there's a lot of illustrations having to do with light, and she
Hmm.
makes the point that where there's light, there's hope. So we did a lantern craft, and all the kids made lanterns, and my youngest was probably like two and
Yeah.
a half at the time, but she carried this lantern around all over the
Oh,
house,
goodness.
and then would ask over and over again, "Can we read the lantern book?" Um, so that was a fun one for her. And then my middle daughter, we read about the Statue of Liberty, and we made Statue of Liberty costumes. We made
Oh, yeah.
two versions of the costumes, one in brown and one in green. And we
Oh.
got to do a fun experiment about oxidation. Um,
Oh, yeah. You were saying to connect it with science. I love that.
yes, yes. And as you were mentioning, the parents can learn things too.
Yes.
So we thought like, oh, science experiment, we should have like a test group and a control group. So
Yeah.
we had pennies as our test group and nickels as our control group.
Yeah.
Well, this was apparently a very bad idea because we discovered that nickels are mostly made also out of copper. And so they both oxidized.
Oh.
So, yes. So, like I said, the parents were learning
Learning
right
alongside.
along. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Okay. Well, now I know that too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
I think one of the other favorites, we did the Transcontinental Railroad, and we tried to set up our basement like a similar, topographics
yeah.
uh, of the country, and then we invited another family over, and they built model Brio train tracks from the east, and we built them from the west, and then we met in the middle and put in a little golden spike,
Oh,
and then actually had battery operated trains like
wow.
across the country.
Yeah. Well, that's
So that
dedication.
yeah, that was also a lot of fun. I mean, it's good. It's good fun for the whole
Yeah.
family, and it's also nice when we can kind of bring in another family and enjoy some good community time as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So where do you find these modules? So if you go to our website, let's see. So here's what the module page looks like on our website, and then you can just basically scroll down, and you can do things in chronological order, but you really don't have to. We didn't make them in chronological order. So if there's something in particular that you happen to be studying or your kids are interested in, you can look it up by either time period, or you can just, pick out a book that looks interesting. Like I said, we tried to pick all really good ones.
Yeah.
And then basically, yeah, here they are. And then basically, if you're interested, you just open it up. They all have like a little introduction. Then they tell you where you can details about the book. So then you can pick it up either
Okay.
at a library, bookstore, used books, wherever. We try and find ones that are readily accessible. I guess that's kind of a fifth criteria I didn't mention. We try to pick books that are easy for people to get their hands on.
Okay. Yes. That's important.
And then we have a list of the possible activities, about how long they're going to take, and how much time to prepare for them. So you can kind of see what you might be interested in. We also have a sample schedule, but again, we tried to make things very customizable for the busy homeschooling parent. So it's all right here, and then you pick and choose what your kids or yourself are most interested in.
Yeah.
But here's one idea, and it talks about the supplies, and then the rest of it is just the details of the different activities. So we
Right.
almost always have some sort of song. It includes some links. You can actually hear it played. This little light of mine, I didn't know this, but it actually, this module is about freedom on the menu. It's about the Greensboro sit-ins,
Hmm.
and civil rights. And this little light of mine is actually connected to the civil rights movement, which I did not
Wow.
know.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, and Smithsonian Institute actually has a recording of it.
Yeah.
We almost always have also some sort of text that the kids can either memorize a small portion of. Here, obviously, we talk about that. I Have a Dream speech, Martin
Mhm.
Luther King Jr. Have political geography, which I had mentioned before. This particular one talks a little bit more specifically about Martin Luther King Jr.
Mhm.
And we get into the arts and crafts. So here's little I Have a Dream speech craft. We also, then the story obviously talked a lot about sit-ins and picket lines. So we made our own picket signs. There's my daughter, no fair. For science here, we made our own paint and then used them on the picket signs.
Oh, okay.
And then the historical reenactment, the sit-in, you can do this different ways. In my household, the way it worked out well, we discriminated based on eye color. So 3 of us have blue
Okay.
eyes and 2 of us have brown eyes. And so for the course of a day, the blue-eyed people were not allowed to eat at the dining room table. They had to stand at the counter, and they weren't allowed to use the bathroom on the main level. They had to go somewhere else.
Okay.
And then, we of course, we did picket line, we did sit-ins in the afternoon. Everyone got arrested and had to go to jail.
Okay.
So here we are, we're picketing right here with our signs. Then in the evening, it was very exciting. We gained equal rights, and we were all able to celebrate by having banana splits. The banana split features prominently in the story. In the
Yeah.
story, and we just did it for a day, but I think it really did bring home to my children the fact that being discriminated against does not feel good.
Yeah.
They were like, this is really awkward. Or the time they were like, oh, I'm gonna just quickly go in and wash my hands in this bathroom. Like, actually, you can't use that bathroom. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, wow. Um, and like I said, but then we had a good celebration when we were all able to be treated equally and all joined
Mm.
together at the table.
Right.
We have typically we'll have like some sort of scripture, uh, these sort of various activities specifically related to the book. We have a second book that's also on this topic.
Okay.
This particular book has like beautiful sort of impressionistic photos. So we
Mm.
talked a little bit about the art of them.
Okay.
Um, and then, as promised, vocabulary.
Mm.
Um, but again, these are all just kind of ideas. We try to make this so families can pick and choose what they're interested in, and we also try to make it so if you're juggling multiple ages, as
Right.
so frequently homeschooling parents are, that you can get different ages can get different things out of it, even if you're all doing
Definitely.
sort of similar or the same activities.
Yeah. So, what is something that you want most families to know about your organization, and how can families get in touch with you?
Great question. So I guess one thing I want to point out is we are a nonprofit organization because our curriculum is free.
Yeah.
So I do want to point that out to families. If you have a library card and internet access, then you're well on your way. You can go in there and check it out. I think a lot of things we already talked about. We tried to put all of this sort of at your fingertips to make it easy, because you're busy.
Yep.
There's a lot going on. So we tried to make it easy. We tried to make it customizable, because no two families are the same. I'm going to
Mhm.
go with no two children are the same. Uh, so you can kind of pick and choose what you want. The best ways to get in touch with us. You can check out the website. We have an email list, so you can sign up for that. You can write us an email. We also have a Facebook page, so you can visit us there as well.
Great. That sounds great. Well, Brianna, thank you for joining us today. It was such a
My
joy to
pleasure.
talk
Thank you
with
for having
you.
me.
Yeah, and thank you for letting us kind of get a look at the curriculum ahead of time. And, it's, as you said, it's all free. And I love that for families. I think that's important too, is giving families free resources, because we both know that homeschooling curriculum can be very expensive.
It is true. It is
And
true.
most of the time, you're going to change your mind halfway through the year and pick out something different.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. Again, if you would like to learn more about Brianna and the American History Education Project, you can head on over to www.ahep1776.org. And to learn more about Homeschoolers of Maine, just go to homeschoolers.of-maine.org. There you can find resources to help you along your journey of homeschooling, and also find more videos about protecting the freedom of homeschooling. Have a great day and enjoy the freedom that homeschooling can bring.